About to host a meeting. What's that?
I was putting a milestone, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going? How you doing?
It's going okay. How you doing?
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Crazy times, right?
Oh my Lord. Understatement.
Yep, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, but we're coming through.
Yeah, you know, we adapt, we find other ways to do things, right?
Yeah, that's the wonder of being a human.
Exactly. It's I think some good things will come out of this. It's just some different ways of doing things.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But we just got to get through it. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's Good. How you doing, Chris? Oh, he's muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
There we go. Got you now.
Hi, Chris.
Doing well.
How
How
you
you
doing?
doing? Hi, Tricia.
All right.
Everybody getting out and about at all, or kind of just stuck at home?
Man, I'm eating all the time. It's
Yeah.
good.
You know, I'm sorry, Trish, but you don't mind me calling you Trish. I'm one of those people that can eat a pound of spaghetti and I'll still be the same weight the next day.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. It's, you know, because I'm eating everybody else out of house and home.
Yeah, I don't have that. I don't have that talent, unfortunately.
So.
My wife didn't go into the, goes to the grocery store, stocks up, and then we eat it all. So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my wife doesn't mind it. She's Sicilian, and you know how Sicilians like to feed people. So
it's not a bad thing.
yeah, not a bad thing. No.
Not at all. Especially when you can eat it and not put on weight. That's even better.
Yeah,
Like everybody's dream.
yeah. Well, I do get cursed by a few people. You know, I can't
Yeah.
help it.
It's all jealousy.
So how's you guys on that bold pivot?
What was it?
Are you on bold? Yeah, bold pivot.
Oh, the Bold Pivot is a program, training program.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
KW. Yeah, I'm doing it. Are you doing it, Chris?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my. I want you to converse with 40 people, not just make 40 phone calls, but 40 people. And
How's that
maybe
going?
half of the calls I've made, I've actually spoken with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've talked to 20 people already?
No, I didn't get to my 40 yet. I'm still working on it. But I got to 20, but talked to about 10 people. And you know, some people want to talk, some keep it kind of short. You know, last conversation I had, I was on the phone with a guy for 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, seller?
No, just somebody that wanted to talk, I guess. But you know, he said he'd take my cards and let me know if maybe a year or two down the road he might move. So they put him in my pipeline.
Yeah, yeah. You're doing good, Chris.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm behind, but
No, you're doing good. You're doing good.
It's not easy. 40 people's, it's a lot.
it is.
Especially if someone keeps you on the phone for a half hour, right?
Yeah.
You have lots of
some people just like it, you know.
Yeah.
Some people appreciate the call, you know. I've had one person that didn't appreciate it, but oh well, you know, move on to the next phone call. Yeah.
The numbers game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine you probably get a better shot at getting people at home now than you would have any other time. So
Yeah. That's true. You know, if I leave a voice message, I'll follow up maybe in a day or two. If I called them in the morning, I'll follow up in a day or two. Try calling them again in the afternoon. And,
Which service do you use? Call or Land Voice, or which one do you use?
I'm sorry?
Which calling service do you use?
It's called Real, no, I have to look it up. Let's see.
Is it good? Like accurate?
Yeah, I'd say that 95% of the phone numbers and emails are correct.
Really?
Yeah. What's it called?
Is it Vulcan 7?
No, it's Cole Realty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You get it through the office?
Yep. Yeah, got through the office. So you can map out where you want to call, or you can just, bring up a street if you want. It has different tools to use. So I'm just cold calling people that, that they're not even, I don't even know if they're on a list or anything for buying anything. I'm just calling them and having a conversation. Most of them are appreciating that.
Yeah.
But, plus the other thing is you get to find out where all the other relatives are living. You know who your competition is, but at the same time, on a professional level, you're all on the same team.
All right, so we got 33. We'll give it, we say we give it 2 more minutes, see if anybody else joins in, and we'll get things kicking.
All right.
Sound good? Tasia, Randy, Jerry, they're all on board too.
Sure, it's pronounced Tasia.
Tasia, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I've seen your name on email many times. I know we've met, but. And Randy, that's easy.
Thanks so much for doing this, Mike. I know we're going to get a lot out of it.
Good.
Yeah.
I hope you do. I hope you do. It's good information to know.
Yeah.
I try to just give enough to give you the basics. Obviously, this, you don't necessarily have to know too many details. You kind of leave that up to us, but some things to keep on your radar as realtors is always a good thing. It's like Bill Stone's over there in his bathrobe, and he's just talking on the phone. So
Yeah.
Is that his view?
yeah, he's got a nice. It's a view of Abington Harbor, he said.
Wow. Bill's living it up, man.
Yeah.
Damn.
Penthouse suite.
Really? It seems like it, right?
Yeah, it looks it's pretty good.
Wow.
One of the girls I work with has a jail cell. That's her view.
And that's her background?
That's her background as a jail cell. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Okay, all right. Well, what do you say we get started here?
Yep.
So as you know, the name of the class is Show Me the Money. I am not Tom Cruise, but I'll do the best I can to look somewhat like him. And basically, what we want to talk about is the basics of funds needed to buy a house. And obviously, the first thing you think of is down payment, but then there's also things like there's closing costs, there's escrows, credits that may or may not come about, and we'll get into all that. Okay, so let's see. So to jump right into it, I'm gonna learn. Bill was kind enough to do a little tutoring session with me a little while ago, and I learned how to share a screen. So I'm gonna put a document up here so we can just kind of follow along.
Baby steps, Mike, baby steps.
Here we go. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so basically, we start off with, when you're buying a house, obviously, you need a down payment. There are some programs that allow for no down payment, but mainly, on the average, you want to have, preferably a 5% down payment, if not more. Loans that allow for less down payment Some go as low as 3%. There are some Fannie Mae, just basic first-time buyer programs that allow 3% down. FHA loans allow 3.5% down. Mass Housing also has 3% down programs. And then if you notice, I have DAP, that stands for Down Payment Assistance. And Mass Housing does have a down payment assistance program as well. So that's where you can actually, a buyer could actually borrow that 3% down payment, which means, you know, at the end of the day, they don't need anything down. In a situation like that, the down payment assistance loan is just a separate loan for that 3% of funds. So on a, you know, example, $300,000 purchase, that's $9,000 down payment. Second loan, and you know, they have I think the one that they have right now is just simply a 1% interest rate on that separate loan. So not to get too, you know, detailed on that, but that's what's available, you know, for some different programs. As far as, you know, where the money comes from for down payment, we as lenders, we have to keep a close eye on that, and we have to season funds. So we look at 2 months bank statements from somebody. We want to basically at the beginning of the process, I ask them where their money's coming from, and I want to make sure it's coming from an acceptable source. You know, acceptable sources can be savings, investments. They can borrow from 401k. They can borrow from another piece of real estate that they might own. As long as they're borrowing from a secured asset, then they can take a loan from it. But at any rate, I want to know where that's coming from, and then more often than not, it's going to come from a savings account. Maybe they might have an investment account that they're going to liquidate, and that triggers me to ask them to send 2 months bank statements of those accounts. All right. And from there, we're going to take a look at deposits. We want to make sure that they didn't suddenly deposit a large sum of money in those 2 months. Okay. What constitutes large has changed over the past few years. It used to be anything over $1,000. And, you know, over time that is changed. Now the rule of thumb is if it's more than 50% of their monthly income, then we question it. So if someone's average income is $10,000 per month and they deposited $4,000, we in most cases, we won't ask where that came from. Okay. Anything above that, we do need to track it. What we find in a lot of cases is that they might say, well, it was a transfer from my Fidelity account. Okay, well, you didn't tell me about the Fidelity account, but that's fine. So let's get the Fidelity statement. And we get the Fidelity statement, and then there's a large deposit there too. And that's how things can kind of spiral at times. But so obviously we do as much as we can up front on that. But you know, from your end, I guess the main thing is to just, you know, keep it on your radar. If you hear them say that, well, I'm gonna take a personal loan out from a bank as down payment, that's not acceptable. That's borrowing from an unsecured. We're basically, that's unsecured borrowing. It's not you know, borrowing against something that they own. So not allowed. Cash, if they say that, you know, I got a bunch of cash, you know, at home in a safe or something like that, that's basically not allowed either. You know, I'm going to sell a motorcycle or I'm going to sell some jewelry. That gets difficult because to do that, you have to show the value of the item that you're selling, which is really, it's pretty tough to do, especially if it's jewelry. To get it true, you have to get an appraisal. So we try to stay away from that. What I basically tend to do in a situation like that, if someone has money coming from something that, you know, aside from an unsecured loan, if it's money coming from, you know, cash or something that, you know, a piece of, you know, even baseball cards. I had someone one time that sold baseball cards, and you know, what I did with that is I had them just give the money to a family member, and then the family member can give them a gift. It's kind of a way around it. Okay. Gifts are perfectly fine if they're coming from a family member. Okay. Bill Stone can't give Randy Parker a loan, or a gift to buy a house. That would not be allowed unless they can somehow prove that they have a blood relationship. Okay.
All right, so I got a question, Mike.
Yep.
So, you know, Joe Smith is purchasing a home, and so you receive it. I receive an offer on my listing from a Joe Smith, but the escrow deposit, $1,000 escrow deposit with the offer, has Steve Jones on the check. Is that an acceptable escrow deposit?
Unless Steve Jones is his brother or uncle or something like that, then no, it wouldn't be. Or unless Steve Jones is buying the property with him, then I would
Okay.
think the answer would be no. So we'd have
All
to,
right.
so that would be something where, that's, without, I know in your side of it, you don't probably want to pry too much, but it might be, that's a perfect situation and a good example of a time that you might want to bring up the question and, just say, have you run this by your mortgage originator? Or is he family or whatever?
Yeah. Okay.
Just kind of warn them, just say you might want to talk to your mortgage originator because that could be an issue.
Okay.
I'd say in most cases like that, I mean, Steve Jones is probably the dad or a brother or something like that. I have one right now where the dad is actually writing the deposit check, but that's fine because we just call it a gift.
So if it's a relative, then it's okay, and it's deemed by the lender as a gift?
Correct. Then it's okay. We have a standard gift letter that both parties complete. We make sure we can document the transaction from, if it was just paid directly as a deposit with the purchase and sales, that's fine. Or if they would just pay, give their mother gives her son a check, and we verify that it came from mom's account and it went into the son's account, then it's fine.
All right, so as a best practice as far as listing agents, we should ask those questions if there's a difference between the person making the offer and what's on the escrow deposit check.
Yep, I think that's a
Okay.
fair question to ask, definitely.
Okay.
Yep, just trying to, keep things smooth, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's go back to okay, so does that all make sense? Does anybody else have any questions before I go on to the next topic? Down payment's pretty simple, I think it's self-explanatory. Okay, so next would be additional funds needed on top of down payment. So obviously you have your closing costs, you have escrows and so forth. But I'm going to throw out a little test. Let's see. I want to just hear some answers. So let's assume that someone's buying a property for $550,000. They're putting down 10%. So the down payment is $55,000. Assuming that they're not getting any credits of any type, what would your guess be, your educated guess be of that they would need on top of their down payment for closing costs and escrows?
About 1.5 to 2%.
That's good. Yep, that's fair. Anybody else? Does that sound about right? You say 1.5. Does that seem high? Does that seem low?
I don't know. I thought that seemed low, but maybe I need to have more coffee talk with you, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. No, actually, that's pretty much right on target. I'd say probably closer to 2% than
Okay.
1.5 in most cases. And that's it. I'm glad that's a good answer because I think it's something that tends to shock a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that they're assuming it's going to be 3 to 4 or 5,000, and in this day and age, especially with taxes, where they are, it's definitely increased. So I have another document here that I'm going to go through that shows you how we come up with these numbers. Let's see. Oh, wrong one, sorry. Excel doc here somewhere. There we go. It's weird. I can't find it here.
All right, Mike, we talked about this,
Yeah.
earlier, and I told you to have these things teed up.
I know, and I did. I was even testing it. Let me see. Let me try one more time. Maybe it's just not.
We can see the document now,
Wow.
Mike.
Yeah, I see a document.
Are we still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we see the document.
Show me the money. Funds
somehow
needed to buy a home.
I just lost video somehow, so hold on a second here. Sorry. First time doing this.
Well, we still see you too.
Can you see me? So
We
this,
see you when we see your show me the money Word document.
all right. There we go. Let me go back to stop share. Okay, now I'm back. Did you see, you didn't see that all the numbers part of it though, right? I don't know why that's not showing up, but anyway. So I have it right here, but let's just go through it. If anybody wants to take a quick note. So this is, and I used all easy round numbers too. So basically, I'm taking my example of a $550,000 purchase, and obviously, so 55,000 is your down payment. In this example, closing costs came up to $3,800. So that's, that's your appraisal, title insurance, attorney fees, recording fees, and so forth. The closing was happening on April 15th. So because when the closing happens on April 15th, the first payment is due June 1st. Okay. Anytime when the closing happens, if there's a tax bill due on or before the date of the first payment, the tax bill has to be paid at closing. Okay, so it's closing April 15th, so the attorney has to collect the tax bill. In this case, it's $575 a month, so that's $1,725 just for the tax bill to pay it directly to the town, in this case, the town of Danvers. Okay. They also have to come up with their homeowners insurance for the first year, which in this case, we're going to round it and call it $1,800. Okay. So that's paid to the insurance company up front, but again, it's collected at closing. And then they have to pay, they closed April 15th, so they have 15 days of interest for the rest of April. So that's $750. They also have to deposit funds into an escrow account for this new loan, so they can pay tax and insurance going forward. All right. So in this case, they'd collect another 2 months of taxes to start the escrow account to make sure that there's enough in there when the August tax bill comes around. All right. Knowing that they're going to start making payments pretty soon. And then, this person was getting owner's title insurance, which is $1,200. So that's in there too. Okay. So it added up to about $11,000 altogether overall, like over and above the asking. So what was it? Tasia, I think, said 2%, and that was pretty much right on. Okay.
So this is on all closing. It's 2%, about 2%.
About, yeah, it's safe. 2% is pretty safe.
Okay.
I think that's, maybe on a condo sometimes it might be a little bit less than that.
Okay.
Oh, still can't find it. Oh well. Okay. Now, another some other funds that we also need to account for is they need to have reserves. So on top of having this, in this case, the 55,000 plus call it 11, so 66,000, is what they need altogether. Any lender would like to also see that they have reserves left over, and especially now, that's pretty important. It's even, looked at even more closely now than as ever because of what we're going through, and then just knowledge of, the job market and people being furloughed and laid off and so forth. So what I normally use, what I like to use as a form of reserves is if they have retirement account. So I'll always ask for a 401k or an IRA just to make sure that they've got money behind them. It's always, especially when someone is right on that line of whether they qualify or not. It's a good compensating factor to show an underwriter that they've got some money behind them if life throws them a curveball sometime down the road. Okay, so when I'm tracking funds to close from somebody, in this case, they need 66,000. I kind of rounded up to 70. I'd like to see they have at least another 10 or 20 in some type of asset vehicle on top of that. So now, a question that I get asked often is, someone will say, well, can I roll my closing costs into the loan? And on a purchase, the answer is usually no. And the reason for that is that, let's take this example again, a $550,000 purchase, their down payment is $55,000, which is 10,000 down. 10% down. If you want to roll something into a loan, what you're saying is you want to add to the loan. So instead of borrowing $495, they wanted to, let's say, add $5,000 and roll it in. Well, now if you're borrowing $500,000 on a purchase price of $550,000, you're not putting 10% down anymore. You're putting like 9% down. Okay, and which then triggers a higher level of PMI. Plus the purchase and sales was probably signed saying that the down payment was going to be 55, right?
But the transaction that I did, she didn't have closing costs, and so we did roll it over into the loan. The seller paid for the closing costs.
Correct, and that's what we're going to get into that. So that's
okay.
Right. So that's an indirect way of rolling it into the loan, but it's not really rolled into the loan. It's really rolled into the purchase price when you do that. Right?
Okay.
Now, the only way to really, what we can sometimes do is we can offer a higher rate, and in exchange for the higher rate, we can give a lender credit. So
Right.
that, maybe we could have given, instead of giving them 3.5, we give them 3.625% as a rate, and then we can give them a $3,000 lender credit. So they're not adding it to the loan. We're just giving them that credit, which offsets $3,000 of their at closing costs. Okay. So that's something we can do.
Okay.
But so perfect segue into credits. Anybody have any questions about closing costs or escrows, or does that all make sense? How we added that all up? So seller credits are something that I think I've always found it to be pretty useful. So in most cases, well, actually, Tricia, so why don't you, let's do this. Why don't you explain a little further, like in your transaction, how did the seller credit come about?
Okay, so the price of the home was $299,900, and because she didn't have the money well, she wanted to save the money. She had it, but she wanted to save the money. She asked for the for more money, basically. So if you go on MLS, the price was $299, but if you go on MLS, it says $307.
307. Okay.
Yeah. So
now let me ask you this: when they were negotiating for the property, was the list price was $299?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then so what they did is they added $8,000
Right,
and then the seller gave an $8,000 seller credit,
right,
which is fine because at the end of the day, the seller still got $299 for the
right,
box, right?
right,
And the buyer in that situation, so let's say the buyer is putting down 5%. Instead of putting down 5% off of $299, they had to put down 5% off of $307.
right,
Okay. And what that probably resulted in was that extra, $6,000 or $7,000 might have increased their payment by $25 to $30,
right,
but it kept $8,000 in the bag for them,
right,
that's some real money, right? They can use that. They might probably have to, buy in furniture and appliances and maybe do some cosmetics to the house.
right,
Okay. And that's the perfect situation of when that happens. You've already agreed, the buyer and the seller have agreed that they want to buy and sell for $299, and the seller still gets the $299, and the net effect to the buyer is they bought it for $299, but it saved them some money up front.
mhm,
Obviously you might have had situations where they arrive upon a price, and then the buyer says, hey, oh, by the way, can you give me an extra credit for closing costs? That's probably a little more difficult, I would think.
right,
Right. Where it also comes into play is if you did agree upon a price, there are no seller credits, the home inspection is done, and there's $3,000 to $4,000 in work that needs to be done, for this, that, or the other thing, and the seller agrees to give the buyer back, let's say $4,000 to go towards the repair of, whatever it might be, right? If you do that, and you keep the price the same, the lender is just going to reduce the price by 4,000. So $299 now becomes $295,
right,
and the amount that they can borrow is now a percentage of $295. So basically, the buyer has to just come up with that extra $4,000. So the better way to do it is to structure it as a seller credit towards closing costs.
okay,
Okay, by doing that, you're truly giving the money back to the buyer. They're actually getting the money in their pocket. Okay, so that's always the way to do that. If you list it in the contract as to to go towards repair, then it doesn't work as well. Okay.
okay,
Okay. Let's see. Now another way, or something else that a credit can pay for is for PMI. So when someone's putting on less than 20%, then they have to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance, right?
mhm,
In most cases, PMI is something that's paid monthly. And actually, I can bring this back up here. So can everybody see this again?
yep,
Okay. So I've used it before when, just as an example, I had, if I have a purchase transaction where, let's say, the appraisal comes in a little bit low. So at the bottom of the sheet here, the example is there is a $510,000 purchase price, and the appraisal comes in at 500,000. And in this case, the person's putting down 20%. So they're borrowing 408,000. Okay, so 408 is 80% of 510, but the appraisal came in at 500,000. So what happens? What's always that's never something you want to hear, right?
mhm,
So when that happens, the first thing that I do in a situation like this, and this is kind of the perfect situation for it, is I immediately check to see what the cost of PMI would be, because now if this buyer wants to keep their loan at 408,000 and the value is 500, it's now 82% of the value of the property. So that means they need to pay PMI. So instead of having buyer and seller battle over 10,000, Because I think we'd all agree that, you know, you got to this point because the buyer agreed to pay 510 and the seller agreed to sell it for 510. So the buyer obviously is comfortable paying that price, right? But probably doesn't want to have to pay PMI, and that's probably going to bug him. So in this example, you know, I got a guy with good credit. The cost of a one-time PMI premium was $23.66. So because PMI you can pay just one time, you can make what call it one fee, and it's paid, and the loan is insured, and the buyer doesn't have to pay any PMI going forward. So the option would be, you know, if the seller, maybe between the seller and the buyer, or the seller by themselves is willing to give a seller credit for $23.66, that covers the cost of the PMI. In this case, I also figured out that the monthly PMI was going to be $66 per month. And PMI automatically drops off when the loan has been paid down to 78% of the original price, or the original value, whichever's less, right? So once the loan amount was paid down to 390, PMI is going to drop. So I got an amortization schedule, and I figured out that after 27 payments, the loan would be paid down to a balance of 390, so PMI would be gone. 27 payments times $66 a month is $1,782. So we said, well, how about let's have the seller give a $1,800 seller credit to the buyer, which is basically the cost of what it's going to cost them to pay PMI for the next 27 months. Buyer said, great, sounds good to me, and they closed it. The loan amount stayed at 408. Buyer's payment never changed, and it just got done without much, you know, back and forth. So that's something that's as an example of where a seller credit can come in handy even after, you know, everything is.
So instead of the seller getting 510, he got about 508.
Nope, the seller still got 510. So the price didn't change. The only thing that changed was really with the lender, because we're now giving them a loan of 408 on a purchase price of 510. So the down payment still exists, but the value is 500. And a lender always looks at the value of the property as being the price that they're paying or the appraised value, whichever's less.
Right, but the sale price is 510, but they're contributing 1,800 toward the
Right,
closing
right,
cost. So they're netting the 510 less the 1,800.
True, right. So I guess the net was like, right, 508.2 was what they netted. And that's, you know, in that case, the seller was willing to do that.
Oh, okay.
Right. But it was just, you know, in that one, it was just the easiest, you know, I think it was just a situation where I think the seller felt like they were getting a pretty good price, maybe a little more than they thought they were going to get to begin with or something. But again, it's a good, you know, good example of where it can be used. So it's always a good, you know, a good idea just to check, and if it's just short, just to check and see, you know, if there's what the difference in PMI would be, if there's a PMI fee you can pay. Sometimes it's just a lot cheaper than, you know, in other cases, I think you would have, some people would have just, you know, fought to drop the price to 510, which costs the seller $10,000, right? I mean, drop it to 500 from 510. That all make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about any of this?
No, but I mean, Mike, when I'm writing up an offer for a buyer client, as a general rule of thumb, I'd like to at least reach out to their lender and I ask the question based on their buyer's financial situation, should I be asking for any type of a seller credit toward closing costs? Because if it's definitely needed, then I'll do that. And Otherwise, I mean, if it's a competitive bid, obviously that's one other contingency that I'd rather not have on my offer. But I mean, as a general practice, I just run it by the lender, and I'll also ask them about, you know, the timeline to perform. Like, what dates does the lender want me to put on the offer?
Right. So as far as the timelines, my rule of thumb has always been from the time I like to use the purchase and sales being signed by all parties as like a big, you know, a big timeline by itself. You know, once the purchase and sales has been signed, then I think 3 weeks from that for a commitment, and you know, 4 weeks for a closing is fair.
Mhm.
You know, because what happens is I like to, it kind of puts it back out there because I know there's attorneys involved and buyers and schedules. And, you know, if you have an offer accepted and you say, yeah, sure, we can close in 30 days, but then it takes 3 weeks to get a purchase and sales in, that really puts everything at you know, it just kind of really tightens everything up. Appraisers don't like to release appraisal reports until they've seen the signed purchase and the signed PNS. Some attorneys don't even like to work on title until it's been signed.
Mhm.
You know, so that's my rule of thumb. 3 weeks after the signing of the PNS for commitment, and then you know, 30 days for closing. Obviously, we can always, you know, in normal times we can do it sooner. These days, appraisals or just getting appraisals into properties obviously is a little bit more of a challenge. So that's it might be a little bit longer.
So the COVID-19, Mike, I felt like prior to all this that the standard turnaround was from offer to close anywhere from 40 to 45 days, give or take. Has the COVID added additional days or weeks in your experience?
No, it hasn't. 40 to 45 is still very, very doable. It's just made the 30-day offer to closing as, you know, though that was tight to begin with. We always, you know, do what we could to get it done, but this has definitely created more of a challenge there. I have one that it closed amazingly only 3 or 4 days late. We had 4 different appraisers decline the order before we got one that was willing to go in. Because the appraisers are, you know, there's some appraisers that only want to do exterior only appraisals. They don't want to go in the houses.
And are certain lenders not accepting that type of appraisal?
It's all a matter of the loan itself. If it, you know, we have this Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans. There are certain loans that, and certain investors that do allow it and certain that don't. So like Leader Bank allows it as long as the loan, wherever we're selling it to, allows it.
Right.
So that's kind of what we have to look at.
Yeah. I think I told you earlier today, I had an appraiser call me. He's not planning to go out to the property at all. And I had to send him a sketch of the floor plan of the home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even a drive-by?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, it is kind of, so I would think usually they'd at least drive by and take pictures of the outside, but he wasn't even doing that. What was the beginning part of your question? We talked about timelines, but
I'm having a senior moment. I don't remember.
I think
No, he was asking, Bill was asking if COVID-19, yeah.
Has impacted the timeline. But no, was there something else also?
I think you said usually you call to ask.
Oh, well, yeah. I usually just check in.
To see if they need seller credits.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Right. And in most cases, it's very rare that someone needs a seller credit. You know, the most common, I guess, would be the FHA loan where, you know, someone is looking to buy a house for $300,000, so they need 11,000 down, and they have 8 in the bank. So they're scraping to try to come up with just the down payment. And that's when when I give the pre-approval, I might say to the agent, like, look, this person doesn't even really have enough of the down payment yet. You know, they tell me that they're going to keep saving and have it. So you definitely will need some type of seller credit with them.
Yeah, I think usually like a first-time home buyer, I find in their experience, they don't have a lot of extra cash in the bank. They're finally at the point where they can at least qualify for a loan on a property, but it seems to be they're that type of buyer are the ones that we ask for that seller credit.
Right. But in most cases, it's more just a want than a need. You know,
Okay.
I mean, a friend of mine and I have bought a couple of properties together, and when we buy them, we know we're going to have to put some work into them and, turn them into rentals. And we'd rather save that $10,000 in cash. So we gladly, all right, so we agree to pay 400. So let's write it up at 410 and just give us back that 10 as a seller credit. It just saves us from having to come up with that extra cash. And, obviously we're upfront about it and say, this is how we want to do it. But, we want the seller is still going to walk away with their 400.
Okay.
I guess it's all about how you present it. How do you guys find that you get pushback if you present an offer, or does the seller not understand how the seller credit works? Or
Some do. Some. I don't know if you remember our buddy Denise, my next door neighbor. Remember for her from years ago?
Yep.
You helped her buy it.
that's
But
right.
yeah, she just didn't understand it, and the buyer for her home asked for whatever for seller credit to a closing cost, and her stance was no. Well, I'm not paying their closing costs. I have to pay my closing costs. They can pay theirs, and
Right.
that was it. She just didn't get it.
Yep. And I think that's human nature. Sometimes it's hard to make somebody understand something. I think it's like they get a certain mindset against it, right?
Mhm.
But in reality, it's just you're just giving somebody a little extra money in a purchase price so they can hand it back to you
Okay.
to cover your costs, and it's a very useful type of thing.
Yeah, just to make the transaction come together.
Yep. Or just like I said, or just give somebody, someone's happy to borrow that extra money to be able to have cash to to buy their furniture and their appliances. So that's all I got for as far as this subject goes. Happy to answer any other questions. If anybody has any.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Randy Parker. Guess not.
Hey, Mike, just let us know what's going on with interest rates today.
Okay, sure. So interest rates are ridiculously low right now. 30-year fixed with no points is at 3%, 3.0%. Yeah, they're the lowest that they've ever been. 15-year fixed is as low as 2.5, 2.6. So yeah, it's good. It is crazy.
And what do you see? Everyone's always asking, where do you see interest rates going?
I don't see them jumping up anytime soon. I think they're low because of this COVID crisis, and it's really driven by what's going on with the stock market and the job market and the bond market. That's what drives interest rates. So I think once we come out of this, you'll see a stock market rally, and that's probably when rates will start to go back up too. I don't think that they'll go really any lower than they're at. I've seen them come down this low back in 2012, and it's almost like it seems like there's a floor of resistance. They can never seem to break below that, much, or at least much below that 3%. I will bring up, one thing to keep in, actually, this is probably pretty important to keep in mind. So things that have been impacted by COVID-19 is that we are a direct endorsed FHA and VA lender, but we are currently not doing FHA and VA loans during this crisis. And a lot of other lenders are doing the same thing, but there's still plenty that are doing them. The reason that we're temporarily not doing them is the way we operate. We're a direct lender, but we act as a correspondent lender, which means we fund the loan with our own money, and then 30 days later we sell the loan to the whatever lender we locked it with, which might be Chase, Wells Fargo, or BB&T, or one of these larger banks. And if we choose to keep the loan, we can do that. We're a licensed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loan servicer, but we're not licensed to service FHA and VA loans. So the fear is if, let's hypothetically say we close a loan for a purchase on April 30th, and we then go to sell the loan on May 30th, which usually takes about 30 days later after it's gone through, all of its audits. If the person that we did the loan for loses their job or goes out on furlough or, is laid off or something like that, and they find that out in a post-closing audit, they now don't have to buy the loan from us. So now we're stuck servicing a loan that we're not supposed to service. Like we're not licensed to service that loan. That risk always exists. I mean, that can happen at any time, but because it's a more likely risk, a greater risk right now because of what's going on, the bank made the decision to back off on those for the time being.
I've heard also the rehab 203K loans are being pulled from a lot of lenders.
Yep, I'm not surprised. We don't do those, but I'm not surprised at all on that. We've also pulled back on a lot of cash out refinancing. We would go to normally 80% of an appraised value, but now we're capping it at 70. We're not doing equity lines right now either. So the fear is not knowing what's going to happen with housing values. I think lenders don't want to be lending too much out there on someone's house and put that person in a position to be underwater, which I think is probably a good strategy. So but just your conforming Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, 5% down types of loans, we're cranking those out. We have underwriters in process, and everybody works from home. A lot of them do work at home anyway, so it wasn't any big change for them. So that's all getting done. But if you have any pre-approvals out there with FHA or VA, you might want to check in on them to make sure that they're still valid with those lenders.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike.
Just a quick question. So, Bill, you're saying that before you write an offer, you call the lender, and what do you ask them?
Well, I mean, I say, hey, listen, I'm representing so-and-so who they sent me the pre-approval letter that you put together for them. And we're writing up an offer on this property. It's at 123 Main Street. This is the offer amount we're putting in. And I just wanted to check with you in terms of the dates that I want to put on the offer, just to make sure that your company can perform to those dates. I don't want to come in too aggressive, but I just want to know, based on what's going on within your process, what you're able to fulfill, in terms of a timeline.
Yeah, and also something about the seller credits.
Yeah, and then I'll also ask them, should I be, based on their financial situation, would it be wise if I asked for X amount from the seller toward the buyer closing costs? And they'll either tell me, yeah, no, that's not necessary, or yeah, that would probably be a big help to them. Why don't you see if you can ask for $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, whatever they tell me.
Okay.
Right. It's a good question to ask, and I can tell you from the lender side, we always appreciate that, because it just, if I can get one done, and I know things aren't that busy, that we're not swamped in processing and underwriting, and I feel like I can push one through. I'm also going to look at if it's an 80% loan, whereas we don't need PMI, which means we don't need that extra approval, which with the PMI loan we do need that extra approval. That saves time. Maybe it's a loan that I know we can get away with a drive-by appraisal. So there's different situations where I know I can kind of slam one through, and other ones where it's like, all right, we might need a couple, like an extra week on this one. So it's, we always appreciate that.
Cool.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Mike. I gotta get to a couple more phone calls before the end of the day today, but thanks very much. This was great.
you,
Enjoyed
Mike.
that harbor
Yeah,
view.
thank you, Mike. That was
Bye,
wonderful.
Mike.
Thank you.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Stay
Take care.
safe.